Welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owner Show. And I am so excited today. We've got my good friend and our boardroom member, Luke Sullivan, on. Luke's story it's amazing. He was a $13,000 a month small gym owner working with independent contractors, feeling like he was going to be tethered to this job and long hours pretty much forever, to now he's fast approaching a seven-figure business. He's going to cross that this year with about $500,000 in profit. He's scaled up. He's got more leverage. So many positive things have happened or really evolved in his business. So excited to share this story with you today. So welcome, Luke.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, let's dive right in. Let's go back and look at kind of what your business looked like when you were running this independent contractor model.
Yeah. So we opened in 2010 and it was pretty much just me and one independent contractor. And then as we kind of grew, I hired another independent contractor and they had about 50, 55 clients and I had about 30. And I was working 12 hours a day, pretty much 5 days a week. And then I would come in Saturday mornings. It wasn't exactly great for my social life, but I figured the grind was going to be worth it. But the independent contractor model is tough just because certain things would irk me and I wouldn't have a lot of pushback on it. And I was trying to present something like, hey, this is what we do here at this gym. And I really didn't have that freedom. So it was a little frustrating, but they basically covered my rent. And so whatever I made, I got to keep. So in some ways I was doing okay, I thought.
Yeah, but you were working long hours, you're paying out a pretty substantial part of the revenue coming into them. So it's kind of like this double-sided coin, right? There's some things that are going well, but there are also in some ways, you're kind of painting yourself into a corner. And you were married with a baby on the way. So talk about how that kind of influenced your decision-making as a business owner.
Yeah. So in 2017, I switched the model from independent contractor to employee, and I had just gotten married. My wife was just newly pregnant then. And it was that shift of, I don't want to be in the gym every hour of the day. And I want to be a dad that's actually going to be around his family. And I know for me personally, growing up, my parents went to every single sporting event. They were at every single thing. And I think that shaped me into kind of who I am. And I kind of want the same thing for my family. So I knew that there had to be a shift. And I know with the independent contractor model, even though some parts of it were easy, they didn't really care about the training aspect of it or if what I said. So, I was logging hours, checking on video cameras to see what sessions they did and stuff like that. And I was wasting all this time and effort on something that really was, at the end of the day, was a couple $100, but the principle of it was really made me really irked a little bit. So I think in the grand scheme of it, I kind of knew I needed to change because I wanted to be able to say Pinnacle Fitness does this.
So, and that was about the time that I came in contact with you through Virtual Fitness Mastermind. So you started to make this move. How bumpy was the transition from having independent contractors to employees?
It was bad. So I hired my first employee, and I think the contractors kind of saw the writing on the wall, and it started getting, obviously the gym was small, so it started getting tighter and more full in the gym. And then there was one of the contractors just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and it was just consistent. And I started to get to the point where I didn't enjoy coming to work. And I told myself, well, this is my business. I should enjoy coming to work. And so I let him go. And about a year before, a gym opened up in the shopping center at the other end of the parking lot, and we couldn't really do anything about it. So he took about 30 people and went down to the other side of the building or other side of the parking lot, and I lost 30 clients. So that one kind of stung, obviously. And so I was trying to figure out, kind of navigate how that was going to work. And then you were speaking at a Perform Better event, I think somewhere out in California, Northern California somewhere. And I decided to go to that. And when I went to that, my other contractor sent me an email and he said, hey, I left the key on your desk. I'm going to the other gym as well. So he took about 25 people. So within a matter of about maybe 3 weeks, I lost 55 clients. We only had about 80. So I lost a pretty substantial amount of people, and it was a kind of come to Jesus moment of how am I going to fix this? And I think that first bit of working with you allowed me to understand, hey, there's a better way of doing this. And with this employee model, I could make up that revenue. And to my surprise, within 6 weeks, I made up all the revenue.
So you made up the revenue pretty quickly. I mean, I know we've talked kind of off camera or off podcast about you attending that event. You met a couple of our boardroom members, Jeff Nelson, Dave Bolduck there. Talk about just that maybe turning point moment for you.
Yeah, I guess I was an athlete in high school and college and stuff like that. And when I went to college, like all of a sudden I was a small fish in the big pond. And when I went to that event, I was someone that I thought I was a pretty good trainer, but on the business side, I was kind of unsure. And that event meeting Jeff and Dave really showed me like I was definitely not a good business person at that point. But the way they grabbed me and just kind of said, hey, this is what you need to look at. And they showed me kind of what they were doing in some of their systems. And we literally sat in the hotel and at some coffee table, and they just pulled out their computers and started basically helping me out. And that's where I was able to take some strategies away just from those hour-long meeting with them to be able to kind of start generating some revenue to kind of make some of that money back from the contractors leaving. So I thought they were the big dogs when I was so excited that they took me aside as someone that was just a $10,000 a month business and were able to help me.
Yeah, I think that kind of pay it forward culture is something that I'm really excited that we've been able to kind of foster. So that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, you went right to implementing and making changes, but I mean, let's face it, there's always some sort of bump along the way. What were some of the biggest roadblocks that you dealt with?
Switching to employees, all of a sudden you're like, you're paying them, and whether they're on the floor or not, like you got to figure out like how to get them full. So, because they're getting paid no matter what. So that was the initial part, was like, how am I going to pay this? And then we were just trying to do different things. Like you're trying to find different revenue streams. And then back at that day, like to me, marketing was what's marketing, right? And we kind of relied a lot on just referrals and whatever. But if you only have 30, 40, 50 clients, like you're not going to have a lot. And I think that was probably one of the biggest shifts, was how do I do something and how do I start to be known for something in that 3 or 4 mile radius? And that's, I think, when we kind of figured out what our niche was and kind of the population that we want to work with. And we were grinding. I mean, that was legit. Like I had a good employee at the time who he understood it and he worked really hard. And we kind of worked together, and then we hired another employee and she did great and she's still with me today. And it's just one of those things where you start to slowly build, and as you build, all of a sudden the money shrinks again, and then you start to build again. So it's just kind of an ever-flowing process.
So, I mean, let's face it, anytime you change something, there's almost always some self-doubt, some fear. How did you push through that?
I would say probably a lot of it was going to the masterminds and stuff like that. I think that's where I thought it was just me having these problems. But then when you go to some of these IBA meetings, like all the guys in the room had the same problems. And that was kind of nice. And I think the first probably 3 meetings were the biggest game changers for me, because when you're starting at like ground zero, all of a sudden, all these questions and all these things that get answered, and you have all these kind of marching orders that you want to take home and implement. And I was really good at that stuff. So every time I went, it moved the needle so much, and we did so many different things. My staff would always be like, oh, he's gone again. This is going to be great on Monday. And sure enough, we'd have all these things to do, but it really moved the gym forward and really got us into going from just a strictly one-on-one model to a semi-private or small group model. And that was one of the big changes that helped us a lot. And we were in a real small setting. So it was an interesting way to kind of do one-on-ones at the same time as doing semi-private.
So, I mean, you mentioned the changes and specifically that kind of shift to a more leveraged model. What other systems did you implement that you felt like were the biggest needle movers?
I would say this ideal planner right here is probably one of the biggest things I've ever done. And I have like 15 of them in the office here. And that's kind of like my rule book or my Bible, whatever you want to call it. But I started to plan more, and I got a lot more diligent about making effort and moving forward. And I tried to look at each week and what was I going to do each week that would move me to this larger goal. And I think that was probably the biggest thing. But also I think it was just generally getting better at being in front of people. Like by nature, I'm more of an introvert. So this kind of forced me to get outside of my shell go meet other businesses, talk to people, call people, that kind of stuff. And I think some of that was just me getting out of my shell. But what I did was I was good at fixing backs. And because of that, like we just started to gravitate towards an older population. And I know some of the masterminds we talked about kind of finding your avatar. And I fought it for so long because an older population, you can't always say, hey, look at this picture here. And I'll look at them here. They're so different. They're not really. And I fought it for a while, but as soon as I went all in on it, everything kind of took off.
Well, I mean, taking off, I mean, you went from that ten to $13,000 range to jumping up, and all of a sudden you've got a $500,000 a year gym, maybe a little bit above. To, I mean, beginning of this year, you're already doing over $100,000 a month. What was like the biggest mindset shift for you to go from being that kind of self-employed overworked coach to being an owner of what, is going to be a seven-figure business?
Probably not having to do everything. That was probably the biggest one. And I think just from a perspective of like, I still kind of have my hands in stuff and I kind of oversee it, but I don't feel like I have to do all the day to day. And I think from a system side of it, I'm trying to document the stuff now so that I don't have to recreate it every single year, every single month. Like I kind of put it together and now all of a sudden I have something where I can just tweak the dates. Like if we do 12 or 14 workshops a year, I don't need to recreate those every single year. So we're kind of getting better in terms of putting that stuff together. I think it's just a little bit better. We have really good people. And then just the system side of it is starting to catch up. And that's the biggest part for us on the back end.
So you got good people, you got systems. I know not too long ago, Doug Sperling, my partner with Wealthy Gym Owners, talked to you about hiring an admin. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I was at an IBA meeting and I was doing, I guess in that high 40s to low 50s, had a couple $50,000 months. And I know the IBA is kind of probably up to that 30,000 range when you have some different problems as you grow. And so he pulled me aside and said, hey, I think you should look at this boardroom. And he's like, so your trainers do this. What does your admin do? And I'm like, what do you mean admin? He goes, you don't have an admin? I was like, no, it's just me. And he yells across the room and he goes, hey, Pat, this guy's got 50,000 a month and he doesn't even have an admin. And it was just this like shock to me of like, I guess I need an admin. It was one of those things where this would probably make my life a lot easier. But as someone that's always been a solopreneur kind of thing, like I always wanted to have my hands on it and always want to be in charge of it. And I think being able to let go of some of those things and looking at some of those tasks that are maybe not worth my time, I guess is the best way to say it. I can probably farm some of those things out that are more beneficial for me to go do other things that bring more revenue in.
So, I mean, really, we've talked a lot about your evolution. It's been a couple years ago now. You joined our top end coaching crew, Boardroom. How did that accelerate your growth?
I think again, the staff meetings or not staff meetings, the actual in-person meetings are huge. But one of the things that really stood out to me was the win the weeks. And I'm not sure if that's how long that's been going on, a year and a half or whatever it is. But to me, that's like a ritual. I don't like to miss that one. So every week I meet with Fred and we basically go through what my goals for the week are and what I did last week. And there's a couple times where he's like, man, you've been talking about this for a couple weeks now and it hasn't got done. Like, is this really important? And you start to just kind of frame it differently. So I think the accountability aspect has been huge. And I think as you grow, you have bigger problems, you have different problems. And I think when you're in a room with a bunch of people that have similar problems and similar size businesses, it's a wealth of knowledge to kind of gain from. And the people in it are so giving. Like I can literally post something in our boardroom and within a couple hours, somebody will respond and with a file or an email or something that they did and kind of give feedback. So it's just a great group in terms of being able to level up just because I'm finding it's like coaching the CEO level versus coaching kind of that still on the floor level.
So, I mean, obviously your revenue numbers are incredible. How has this transformation affected your life in other ways?
It's been huge. Like, I guess the biggest is just the mindset of if something pops up, I don't have to like stress about, oh, my car just broke down. I need to get it fixed. I don't think about like, ooh, I got to move this money or how am I going to pay for it next month? Or I just don't think about it. And all my house is paid for, all that, my car is paid for every month, my wife's car is paid for, the kids go to school, the kids have babysitters, all that stuff is paid for, and I don't even think about it. And all the vacations are covered. All these things are covered now that we're living, my wife says we're living our best life. And I think it's just the workload is much less. My wife is not working on Fridays anymore. She's only working like 15 hours a week at her other job now. So, I mean, it's one of those things where just from a family perspective, like today, I'm going to go read with my son at a school. He's a star student. So I have more opportunity to do those family type things. And I just get time to get away from the business, and my staff does a great job and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, you are already doing $250,000 in profit for you and setting a goal of almost $500,000 of profit. So, I mean, I guess kind of expanding on that, what's this level of success mean to your family?
Yeah, I think it's a very uncertain territory for us because we've never been in this position before. So it's kind of a weird thing to not, like, basically we're going to expand now in the gym and I don't have to get a business loan. So we're going to put out basically another $200,000 to open up this new space. And it doesn't take away from the family. It doesn't take away from anything. I don't have to get a business loan and pay this absorbent percentage. We're just able to use the recurring income to pay the contractors to basically get it done. So I think from a family perspective, just this, there's no stress. Like the money just goes into the account and everything is covered. And I think from from my wife's perspective, there's a certain security in that. And there's a certain amount of, there's not as much fear. And obviously as a dad, you always want your kids to do well and always have enough. And I think that perspective of just everybody's good. And we live in a better house now, and we're able to move after COVID and all that stuff. So it's been a good situation.
So, I mean, thinking back, what's the biggest difference between 2016 Luke and Luke now?
I would just say awareness. I mean, honestly, I think my business acumen has gone way up, and that's a direct correlation to the boardroom and to the IBA. I mean, I think it's just everything is incrementally increased in terms of my knowledge base, in terms of the marketing side of it and the sales side of it. And I think just the way that you coach is very personal. And I think that in this business is one of the game changers, because if you're very personal with your clients, they see that. And if you make your gym a very personal feel and very or non-intimidating, whatever, like that is a game changer. And especially for the population that I work with, having that personal touch and kind of figuring out like, this is the way that we're going to do it. Like you can have all the systems in the world, but if your place isn't fun to come into, if your place isn't friendly, people aren't going to stick around.
So, I mean, you've been there, you dealt with struggles and challenges. What's your message for owners who are struggling right now and want to turn the corner?
Just get started. Like you got to find, like, coaching is the biggest thing. Like I was an athlete my entire life. Like if I didn't have coaches, I wasn't going to get better. So just like in business, you need to find someone that you resonate with and someone that's going to move the needle. And if they've done it before, that's a good place to start. And I think you have a lot of choices out there now, but they're all very flashy. And I think finding someone that has a personal touch, kind of like what you and Doug do, I think that's a game changer. And I think obviously you've been very successful in your business over the years, but there's a reason for that. And I think that being able to have conversations like this and have one-on-one conversations in some of these mastermind meetings really moves the needle. And I think people just have to start. The hardest part, like in the gym, we celebrate just walking in the door. Same thing for coaching, business coaching, just pick up the phone and call.
I mean, Luke, your story is incredible. If somebody wants to follow a similar path, I mean, we talked about starting, where do they start?
I mean, honestly, like I started with Virtual Fitness Mastermind and then I moved up to IBA and then to Boardroom. I guess it's kind of like just like seeking out coaching. I think I probably started with you. I've started probably reading some of the books. So all the books that you had out there. And I think when you read some of the books, it's very plain and simple and it explains things really easily. And you're like, oh, that's something I could implement right now. And I think with these mastermind groups and the kind of the mentorship stuff, like I have done a lot of different things in the last 10 years in terms of coaching. Like I've signed up for different events and gone to different masterminds and stuff like that. And by far the group that you've put together has been by far the best. And I can just say that these are my people. And when I go to some of the other ones, like, yeah, they might have some good information, but it's just not my jam. And I think finding that place that you want to be, and I think not having it flashy and all about the ads and all about the gimmick of this and the shiny object here. I think you preach it as consistency. And I think that's probably the number one thing I've done over the last 7 or 8 years, is just been consistent with what I do in the gym, with the marketing and all that kind of stuff. And that's what's really paid big dividends.
Well, I mean, Luke, I'm incredibly grateful for you coming on and sharing your story. I think it's inspirational, it's motivational, and frankly, I mean, it's a roadmap that people can follow. So I appreciate that more than. And if you are watching this, or if you are listening in and you want to get on the path to building a $500,000 a year business, a $750,000 a year business, or kind of follow the path that Luke's taken and get to $1 million and beyond, you can connect with us at the link below. You can email me at pat@patrigsby.com. We'd love to help you. And again, Luke, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. And that's Pat and Luke with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owner signing off.